beers. Let's drink them, huh?
If you really want some film at 11, why don't you follow me down to the brewery? I'll tie a bowling ball to my ankle, dive in the vat of beer. I'll leave this world the same way I entered my marriage, dead drunk.
Hello.
Want a beer?
Hook it up.
Yeah. Hook me up.
Yo, Herb, take it from the top. 1, 2.
Beer?
This is how we do it.
My mic sound nice. Check 1. My mic sound nice. Check 2. My mic sound nice. Check 3.
Are you ready?
That's cute. I remember when I had my first beer.
You like parties? Yeah. We can invite all our friends and have soda and pie.
Yeah!
I hope no bad people show up.
My mic sounds nice, check 1. My mic sounds nice, check 2. My mic sounds nice, check 3. My mic sounds nice, check 4. My mic sounds nice, check 5. My mic sounds nice, check 6.
Are you ready?
You want some of this milk?
Rather have a beer.
What do you guys give me if I kill that bird? Barbara, that's a bald eagle. Get away, Baldy! Yeah!
Oh, well, good evening, and good evening. This is The Wort with Mike, Pete, and Steve, GovsRadio.com. Check us out. Go to our website, GovsRadio.com. Also, we are streaming live tonight on Facebook and on YouTube. Go to Facebook or you type in Govs Comedy Club Radio, and boom, there we are, streaming live with our guests tonight, Jamie and Rachel from St. James Brewery in St. James. Woo!
Cheers.
Let's kick it off with some really nice sponsors. Tonight, we are sponsored by Brewbag, Cornhole, Beer Pong. What's better than a backyard game with a little bit of Brewbag? Hashtag long games. Go to brewbag.com or follow our link in our Instagram bio, because there you will receive a percentage off your first order. So go to our Instagram page, click the link, and go to brewbag.com for your Brewbag Cornhole Beer Pong combination yard game today. We are also sponsored by VintageBeerClubShirt.com. VintageBeerClubShirt.com. I say it right this time without hesitation because I'm confident. Confidence. Man. VintageBeerShirtClub.com. Check them out for your vintage beer shirt needs. Of course, in the promo code, type in Wort, W-O-R-T, for a percentage off your first order. And thereafter, you will enjoy all the vintage beer shirts your heart may desire. Go to VintageBeerClubShirt.com. My man is handing out shirts all damn day long. So thank you very much to him. Steve, take it away as you're sipping your beers. Rosie's Draft Solutions.
Rosie's Draft Solutions provides professional draft beer system services, line cleanings, and more for your establishments or any customers. You can enjoy the best quality beverages by their cleaning services. They take care of bars, restaurants, halls, events, homes, all other beverage establishments across Long Island and Westchester. You find them at rosiesdraftsolution.com.
And when you call Nick, tell him the Wort with Mike, Pete, and Steve sent you. You're going to get a percentage off any order, any cleaning, any hardware, anything you need. Just let him know the Wort had sent you there. Finally, we are sponsored by Tavour. Tavour for beer right to your door. Go to Tavour.com and the promo code type in Wort and get a percentage off your first order. Beer shipped from all over the country directly to your door. Go to Tavour.com for more. It's a lot of ors, if I realized. Tavour, order, door, got it. A couple other little runners-up and honorable mentions. Of course, taphandles.com. Go to taphandles.com for your small brewery needs. Go to Tap Handles to get your large capacity needs. Tap Handles creating all these crazy tap handles. Not this one, though. This one was made by Rosie's Draft Solutions. Thanks, buddy. Also, go to Hartwell Wood Shop, directly in the heart of Patchogue. Hartwell Wood Shop. Check it out online. Go to hartwellwoodshop.com. And, Pete, you want to give a shout-out to our last sponsor for this evening that I stopped by the way, guys, and I don't know if you got it net, but I gave you guys something as a parting gift for being a guest on the show tonight. Pete, do you know who it is?
Brewers Hardware?
Boom! Give us the big plug.
Boom! BrewersHardware.com for all your homebrew, small production brewery needs. You need that quick part.
Tri-clamp for president.
Tri-clamp for president. Absolutely. Hoses, gaskets, I imagine brew kettles, homebrew supplies, all that good stuff. I don't think they ship propane, but all of your other brewery hardware needs.
A little bit.
BrewersHardware.com.
Check them out, brewershardware.com. Thanks a lot for supplying us with gift certificates. We hand them out to our guests, and our guests tonight, Rachel and Jamie from St. James Brewery, were recipients of tonight's, what was it?
Let's call it a prize pack.
Prize pack, I like it.
Prize pack.
I was thinking of a good way to say it the other day. It was also, we have other stuff too. I just didn't have it with me that day, so we'll send you some other stuff. But I couldn't think of it as like parting gifts. It's not really parting gifts. I couldn't think of a good name for it. On the radio, they usually call it something like...
Watch some game show networks for a little while.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure it'll come to you.
I should know I did radio, but I never did like giveaways like that, so or guest giveaways. So on the major stations, when they have it on, Ariana Grande is going to be in studio at Z100. She gets something for being there, not just the promotion. She'll get like a Corvette or something like that. I don't know. they just hand stuff out to people. It's crazy.
I
Guys,
don't think we're there yet to be handing out
no.
Corvettes.
Well, unless we get sponsored by Glen Cove Corvette, which would be awesome, and all three of us would be driving around yellow Corvettes. Rachel, Jamie, thanks a lot for being on the show tonight. Really appreciate it. We were trying to get guests over these last few months in quarantine that weren't local, but when we kept going back and forth, we got to have them on. I mean, you guys are dead on busy, considering that both Steve and myself were up at the brewery in the last few days, and it was busy. And you're brewing and you're creating crazy stuff. We had to have you on. And it worked out perfectly because there's a lot of big stuff coming out in the next, let's say, few days and even few weeks. So we really wanted to have you on to get that out there to everybody and let them know what's going on. So, again, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yes.
Let's start off very easy. Let's get the background, the history of the St. James Brewery, how it came to be, and how it got started. Uh-oh.
I forgot to say something.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Steak sauce.
Oh, there you go.
Steak sauce.
I don't think Pete was on that message.
No.
I don't think he got it. He doesn't get tagged. That's the problem. So he didn't get to see your post. Yeah. I'll screenshot and send it to you, Pete, so you can understand the joke. Let's see how this works. So give us a little background, guys, and tell us how this all got going.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us on. We appreciate it. We're very psyched to be here. St. James Brewery is about now 10 years old. We were looking back a little while ago, and we started in 2011 was when we got our first licenses. And it all came about basically through the home brew, like everybody else that's local. We were home brewers, and one thing led to another, and then things just started to get bigger and bigger. And before we knew it, we were a self-operating, ongoing, brewery. Kind of took us a little bit by surprise, but we really have been focused on Long Island and local farmers since the get-go, since pretty much our onset, and that's something that we try and stick to even to today.
So did it start where you guys are currently located, or was it something that you had another spot and moving from there? Give us a little background of kind of where you guys ended up and how you got there.
Sure. We started in Long Island City, Queens, back in 2011, and we had a small space there. And we were in the process of moving out to Long Island because a lot of the farmers that we had worked with and continue to work with were out here. So we slowly migrated out to Long Island. But initially it was Long Island City, Queens, and we moved to Holbrook in 2013, I think. 2013.
In fact,
that's a big move from just geographically. You usually don't see breweries move, more than a couple towns over. Skipped over a couple counties there.
We had family this way, so we had kids. We had a couple kids, and we had we were in an apartment.
A lot of practical reasons. As well.
we actually our first connection into Long Island breweries was to know Steve through our visits to the Ginger Man, which is where we would go.
And Becerra.
And Becerra. And we would visit there, and she would say, hey, there's another guy, that's out there that's doing great stuff. And you gotta hook up with this guy. You gotta meet this guy. He's crazy.
That is true.
And so that was back in about 2013, right, Steve, or so? 2012?
I would say right in 12, 13, in that range. You would come visit to my little office, and with nothing else in the whole place, because we were trying to get it going, and we'd sit down and just talk about, and he always asked me, so what, is there anything that you can tell me right now that might help me? And I'm like, yes, don't do it. Do yourself a favor.
You were so helpful, Steve. You were always so helpful.
Yeah, that's funny.
I tried.
That's true. Very, very much so. Very much so. For me, it's a labor of love. What I really tell people, the overlying philosophy here is, I could never sing or dance or draw or act. My artistic talents really did not extend very far. Yet I always had this. I always wanted to be some sort of I always wanted to be artistic in some way. And,
you seem like you could have been a good ballerina. I mean,
I could have been a ballerina. I just didn't have the right clothes. For that.
Shoes wouldn't fit. I got it.
Yeah.
That's how I got into it. I would make beer, and it was almost an artistic endeavor for me. And that's really the only reason I actually stayed with it, from being a home brewer to the development of the brewery. I came from a business background, so that was really where my background was in the business side of whatever it was that that I was doing, whether it was construction or where I'd started working on the New York Stock Exchange when I was 18 years old. I was always a brewer, living on the Upper East Side. I had one of those rent-controlled apartments, and then it was 96 degrees in the wintertime. Summertime, still the heat was still going off, and we'd make beer, and they always wound up being these crazy style beers. And the reason I started making Belgian style beers really was because where I lived, I needed a high tolerance, high alcohol yeast that could literally withstand the home brewing environment that I was brewing in. So that's how I kind of got into the wild yeast not the wild yeast, but the kind of funkier yeast and things like that we use was really out of necessity from all those years ago.
So when you guys were in LIC, did you have a tasting room, or was it just a production brewery? What was the setup there?
Yeah, just a tiny little production brewery, and we would sell our beers to the local bars like the Ginger Man Pub and a few others. But that was really it. All of our connections were through New York City bars and restaurants and different events that we would do out there. So when we moved to Long Island, that really continued. That was our biggest market. Even when we first started out here was New York City. We really focused on that because that's where we started and that's where we had our connections. So it took us a little longer to actually break into the Long Island market than it did, because we had already been somewhat, a little bit established in the city. So it was a nice transition to be able to be closer to our farmers, closer to our suppliers, yet at the same time have access to our markets.
Was it harder when you came out here to Long Island to break the conceptions of a Belgian-style beer, to get people out of wherever their trend was at the time in 2011 or 12 or whatever? Was that a tough sell at first?
I don't. It's a hard question to answer because I don't really look at it that way. Mm-hmm. It was just something that I like to do and I like to drink and I wanted to share with people. And I was also very understanding that there is almost, in a sense, for me anyway, there's a progression that beer drinkers go through when they start, younger and lighter stuff, more commercial. And by the time they get to things that are Belgian and a little bit, so they've got a little bit under their belts, so to speak, you know. So that was really my market from the beginning. And now the beer Rochelle Blanche, that was the very first beer that we made. And that was kind of my homage to what Allagash was doing at the time. I went to college up in Maine when Allagash first started. I think probably one of the first people to drink an Allagash White in a bar up there when we were in college.
Great Lost Bear.
Yeah, the Great Lost Bear in Portland, Maine. And
love that place.
Where'd you go to school in Maine?
Both of us went to a place called Colby College. It's in Waterville, Maine. It's a small art
I have a
school.
buddy that lives up there. Bar Harbor.
Yeah.
Close to Bar Harbor.
Yeah.
But we're pretty far north. That was
okay. Further than that.
And
He would
Rachel's
probably know it.
family up there, so we've gone back every year. At least a few times a year.
Beautiful up there. I mean, now the main beer scene right now is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous. So many great breweries and small town ones that you're just like, oh, this exists here? That's crazy.
the best.
And even dating, I'm not going to date myself, but when we were in college, back in the 1990s, the beer scene was pretty big up there. It was pretty prevalent. And, that all has to do with legislation and progressive state governments that allow different types of alcoholic beverages to be sold in certain manners. And we didn't see that in New York State here until Governor Cuomo here came into office here, and he started to really help local brewers in terms of just allowing us to do things that they were doing in Maine back in the 90s, and Massachusetts for that matter. You've got a lot of good stories up there as well.
I went to school in Manchester, New Hampshire in 1997. I'll date myself. So I was close to friends in Maine. A couple of people were going to St. Michael's, I think. Is that in Maine?
Yeah.
Yep, St. Michael's. So I've been there a few times back in the... And you're right. The presence of things like Long Trail. That was a big deal. Magic Hat kind of stepped into the scene very close there. So that whole, northeast area really had that craft beer scene kind of figured out. Same thing in New Hampshire. It was weird because you didn't see that same presence down here at all during that time.
And that's exactly how I got into homebrewing. I came back. I was living in New York City when I graduated from college, and I came back and we were drinking Allagash, and we were drinking all these great breweries up there. And when you wanted a good beer in New York City, they'd hand you a book, like Peculiar Pub. They'd hand you a book full of imports, and they're great beers, but nothing was local. Nothing was even really American. It was totally foreign. So I just happened to walk into a place called Little Shop of Hops. It was on East 36th Street. It was a tiny little railroad place, and one door you walk in, and on the left side was all this homebrew stuff, and on the right side was a courier service, bicycles coming in and out, packages in and out all the time. So I'd go in there and I'd just buy a couple of things and go up to my little apartment, and that's how it really all started for me anyway, was the fact that I couldn't get what I had in Maine. Yeah. New York City, of all places.
Yeah. I mean, you think it would be like the central hub for trading and shipping and stuff like that, but yet it wasn't acceptable because the big guys pretty much had a lock on the market.
There was a couple of brew pubs, but it really was it was an uphill battle, and a lot of it they were fighting legislation. Not I don't want to harp on that, but that's really why there weren't a lot of they just couldn't operate. And once that changed, you see a lot more Heartland, things like that. But for the most part, that's really where we were at. And it always stuck with me. The Belgian style always stuck with me for those reasons. And that's really how it got started.
Right.
We wanted to pay homage to those old world brewers that were doing it farmhouse style, in a sense, by hand. It was, and that's from there, that was the inspiration for the farm to table. And once I started coming out here and meeting some serious farmers, then it was like, wow, this fits right into what we're trying to do here, because we already have the Belgian farmhouse style that we enjoy drinking. So what, in a sense, were Belgians doing there? There's countless stories. Stan Hieronymus is a good storyteller where he'll say things about the Belgians where, a Belgian brewer will basically use what he has.
We're in our tasting room.
You have the windows open?
Yeah.
There you go.
St. James is wild tonight.
It's crazy.
Come to St. James.
People are dying to get some of those nachos at Del Fuego.
Yeah.
That's what I had when I was there. It was so smart. I mean, God, you have a awesome. I mean, you weren't gonna in the space you have. You weren't gonna set up a kitchen. So at this point, what better than to have the ability to get any Mexican deliciousness next door.
Yeah, we got a lot. We have a lot of great restaurants around here.
Yeah, we're in a nice little area for restaurants and pretty much whatever you want, Mexican, Italian, steakhouse.
Eat Mosaic.
Eat Mosaic. That's our go-to spot.
Nice. So when you came out to Holbrook, you were looking for, I guess, a production facility just like you had in LIC.
I was looking for a production facility, and we were looking to tie in the name St. James to our St. James. And the name St. James came from the fact that we were paying homage, basically, to the Belgian styles and the monastic traditions of the monks that would make beers like Chimay and Rochefort and all those things. So that's when we got into the St. James Brewery. And when we came to Long Island, people said, well, you've got to go to St. James. You've got to be there. We've got to be there. And we did look for a while. We looked for a production facility, but it's infrastructure. It's industrial. You got to find the right spot that can handle
water, sewers, utilities.
What you're doing as a brewery.
The North Shore in Suffolk County is a tough place to be as a brewer.
Yeah, it's It can be, you got to deal with a lot of things that you don't have to deal with in other places. And we understand that. We live on an island here. And, I've heard more than once that when you put something on Long Island, when you put something down to the ground, it takes about 8 years for it to either reach the Sound or the Bay.
It's true.
So anything that you put in the ground is basically going to go one way or another. So, the less that we do, we totally get that. And it's one of the things that we really work with at our own brewery is recycling a lot of the stuff that we have and managing our wastewater and things like that.
Yeah, to bring home that point, Grummond in Bethpage, they've been tracking that, waste disposal seeping through the soil for years. I used to work at a bar in Bethpage, and the actual water authority would come in and have a drink, and they'd talk about it. I'd have to ask them, so where are we at? It will take another few years. I think that was about 2 years ago. It'll probably be another 3 or 4 years before it reaches the Great South Bay. But it will reach the Great South Bay. It will travel, as far towards gravity and then closest to the shore as possible. And then we got a real, problem. I mean, we have a real problem now with a lot of the people in Bethpage suffering from, large cases of cancer and all that nuclear waste or whatever, the parts and airplanes and moon parts that they build lunar modules with, crazy materials that just dumped in the backyard,
Maybe,
so you're right. We got to really think about, doing our part, as we always say, to try to just be a little more kind to our little sandy beach that we have here.
Sure, we live on an island. They're not. We can't expand any further out of our communal boundaries other than until we hit the water, and then that's pretty much it. So we've got to come up with other ways, and we're on board with that. The thing about it was we also had to deal with legislation in terms of zoning. Where can you put something and where can you not put something? So I had a friend in Holbrook who said, hey, why don't you come down here and check out Holbrook, because we've got it's everything that you're going to need. And it was. So that's how we first wound up in Holbrook. It was really just a zoning issue and close enough to our farmers, yet also being able to do what we wanted to do.
Yeah, case in point, you're in, Brewery Row there with Spider Bite, 1940s, Squareheads, all
Good
people.
company.
Yeah, good company. I mean, great community
community.
for bar hopping. It was awesome. I think I did stop at Spider Bite the day I stopped at your place to get stuff to go up to. I wanted to tell the story, but I got the double and the triple, and I was going to upstate for my buddy's bachelor party in a cabin, and it's the only beer I bought. So I bought, I think, 3 of each for us to have as we're just hanging out. That was one night. We were there for 24 hours. So it was a great night. And some of my buddies that don't typically drink Belgians loved it. They loved the double. The triple might have been a little much, but at the end of the night, it didn't matter at that point.
Yeah.
At a 9%er, they're like, whatever, let's go. But they loved the double. I love the double. I had the double when I was there the other day.
Thanks.
It's one of my favorite Belgian beers from anybody on Long Island. I don't think I've had a better one. So a very big favorite for me.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
And I was disappointed that it's not in bottle. I couldn't find it because I was like craving it. I know it's coming. I know.
Almost. So we naturally carbonate everything, and it's really half the battle.
Right. The time
we
it
make our
takes.
beers, and then when we carbonate them, it's a question of giving them enough time sometimes, and using different yeast strains and things like that. So sometimes it takes about 2 weeks, sometimes it takes 3 weeks, sometimes it takes 4 or 5 weeks, and we just keep an eye on it. We keep them at a certain temperature, and it's interesting now though, because as we do grow and as we do expand, it's the half of the battle is keeping into those traditions or the methods and manners in which you make the product in the first place, because that's why you were doing it in the first, that's why you were doing it initially. So to keep it going is really a challenge that I embrace. I enjoy doing it, but it's certainly I'm always trying to fill in the parts to a puzzle. It's easy for the home brewer. It's easy to carbonate 5 gallons of beer. Try carbonating 2,000 gallons.
And what's great about the Holbrook facility is that when you walked into the storefront, you just saw straight tanks. I mean, it was just tanks. Yeah. So you got to see there was nothing to hide. Everything was just there in plain sight.
That's right.
No, we have nothing to hide.
That's right. We have nothing to hide.
Cleaner than my home.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and it was great because even at the facility in Holbrook, after a while, we'd work with a lot of the local farmers, and then a couple of them would, in the off season, come and start working at the brewery. It was. Awesome. It became very familiar. It was nice scene. So we like to keep that going, and we have some seasonal help, but it's always from our farms and our farmers.
Now, do you still keep the production facility in Holbrook?
Yeah. So we make all of our own beer, and we do it all in Holbrook.
Okay.
So we brew 16 barrels every 2 weeks. Comes out to about 400 barrels a year, maybe a little bit more than that. It usually comes out to be more about 17 barrels or so, 16, 17 barrels in there. But we're on pace to do about 400 barrels, and with our next upgrade, we'll double that. Initially we'll double that.
Bigger brew kettle.
Yeah, right. Bigger brew kettle.
What are you working with now? You have you said 16, or is it?
So what we do is I have an 8-barrel system that we double batch.
There you go.
16-barrel fermenters, and then we move that into 30-barrel bright tanks.
Gotcha.
And,
so, obviously you made a big upgrade by having your storefront in St. James. What was the positioning and reason for the move besides the name matches finally now? But what was the reason why Holbrook isn't a tasting room anymore?
We always wanted to be in St. James, but when we started in Holbrook, we opened up our tasting room, and shortly thereafter, we actually had stopped selling to the public. We had, I guess, a little bit of a string of bad luck, I would say.
A lot of bad luck.
But the thing of it was, we weren't allowed to sell to the public because Suffolk County, again, it was a wastewater issue. People coming and using the facilities, and
okay.
It's bathrooms.
It's numbers on paper rather than the reality of what's going on, and that, it's just things that we deal with every day. It's business,
right? And they're tracking that wastewater. I mean, they're constantly looking at what's being used and what's going out, huh?
And that's the problem. No, they don't track it. What they do is they use formulas. They use formulas so that what is relative and what is real, it doesn't matter. It's what the formula says. So, again, it's just something that we had to deal with. So that's really was the impetus to get the tasting room in St. James open as quickly as we could.
Yeah.
And that's the facility in St. James is just a tap room. There's no brewing there.
That's right.
And that was.
And you guys just opened that up right as like a week before, early March, right?
3 days. We had 3 days that we were open, and then it seemed par for the course though. So we were like,
that's about right. And we kept smiling through the whole thing because we were like, we've gotten so far and we've done so much that what else could possibly happen? Bring it on, in a sense.
Well, I mean, the great thing was it was considered essential during this, so you were able to do to-go.
Yes.
Did you do delivery orders? Did you take online delivery orders and stuff like that?
We really didn't do many online delivery orders. We have these windows that open up to the outside as like a walk-up window.
Yeah.
So we went back to the old-fashioned filling of growlers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of growlers.
Yeah.
And the support that we got from the community was unbelievable.
Yeah, we definitely would not have survived without the support of the town of St. James.
Yeah, so shout out to the town of St. James, Smithtown, St. James, anybody around Wisconsin.
No
To their credit, we were sitting next to a table, a family. It was someone who had a young child. I think you spoke. That was the table you spoke to before you walked back in, and you obviously they singing your praises about the beer, doing a flight, a little tasting, and then your name was pulled into the same conversation as Evil Twin and Trillium. Those were the two other breweries that were put into the same conversation and what they were talking. I was like, wow, you're in great company.
Good company.
Yeah, with those two breweries.
Well, we appreciate it, and we're just going to keep trying to do our best and do what it is that we do, and we hope everybody likes it and comes to check it out and makes their own decisions.
The deciding of the tasting room now, what timetable went into that? Was a year before opening? How did you seek that out, find that, and what was the timetable before you opened right before March or during March?
Well, it was when we had our issues with the wastewater with Suffolk County. They actually became probably our biggest ally in finding a new place.
Huh.
So when we would try and search different areas, we would look at, because of our inexperience, we would look at places that looked good to us for what we needed. But when we went to them, they would say, no, it's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. Why don't you follow this path? Why don't you look for a place that's like this? Because it's going to have this, this, and this, which is what you're going to need to open for what you want to do.
Right.
And so that's really where we started our search, right?
Yeah, the place that we have right now is used to be a takeout Chinese restaurant. So we went in under the classification as a takeout restaurant, which is because although we fall under ags and markets, we went through the Department of Health, although we didn't really need to. So we really actually now during the pandemic, if we really wanted to serve food, I could serve food here. But the bottom line on the North Shore is that if you need to go into a place that was serving food or some kind of alcohol beforehand, you can't really recreate a space to do any kind of that.
Right, I got it. Yeah,
because of zoning.
Because of wastewater.
Well, if you think of it, Pete, it's the same reason why in Lindenhurst you can't open a new bar without another bar closing, right? Same concept. It's not about the alcohol; it's about the drinking. It's about replacing one with something very similar in regards to all the waste they're using. Yeah.
Wastewater density or cesspool or sewer densities.
Yeah.
Things like that. Absolutely. There'll be a bunch of breweries that are on sewer systems that'll talk about how they've got to meter out their wastewater slowly, a little bit at a time.
Really, just like a slow release, so
Slow
then they
release.
need a storage tank to hold it, and then they need to have a valve on there to tell you how much is coming in. That's crazy.
That's right.
All the breweries out east are like that.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah.
All Riverhead, all that way, they all have to meter and everything that they clean with gets captured, and then over time gets put back in with clean water.
Now, I mean, in a production facility for like Greenport, who does massive distribution, how do they do that? Because they have two sites and they can double up on it, or how does that work?
No.
With them, I know they are pulling off sludge, and actually putting it in containers and having it shipped
okay.
away. So they're not putting any like solid in, and then after that, liquid wise, I know they have a very large tank over the one in Peconic, and the same thing, trickle effect. They just trickle it in.
That's
iconic.
Yeah.
It's got to be something that for a smaller brewery, it's just out of the cards because of the cost, right? I mean, it's just silly to have something like that unless you're kind of matching that with sales. And when you're doing, like you said, 400 barrels as opposed to 4,000 barrels, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely it's a trade-off, and a lot of times economically it'll put you out of business for sure. So definitely something that we deal with on a regular basis. I guess our two biggest issues really are wastewater and local government agencies, and state government agencies, and what they expect of us. That's really our two biggest issues here.
I think you're right in saying that one of the bigger proponents in my time for breweries in a state has Cuomo's passed a lot of legislation, definitely starting out with helping with the the farm brewery license and matching that. Do you guys have a farm brewery license, and do you completely, because I know you say you source a lot of local ingredients closer to your farmers, so how is that working out for your supply chain and all that other stuff?
As far as our licensing goes, we were one of the first farm breweries to get the farm brewery license. And at that time, even people within the know within the state and various organizations would tell us to get two licenses, get a microbrewery license and get a farm brewery license, because you don't know what's going to happen, and you have the ability to dual license right now. So we've been dual licensed since we started. However, I don't believe I've ever brewed a batch of beer under my microbrewery license.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, the thing though, I do have to say, when you did get the farm brewer's license, back at that time, the malt and hop availability from New York was very scarce. Sometimes the quality wasn't where it is now, and it took a few years, and now it's becoming big business, and they're actually producing some really good products out there.
Amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. When I first started, I made many trips. So there wasn't a maltster or a farmer that I used that I didn't go visit their place of business to see how they did business, to see what they were doing. So I saw the gamut of really guys that were doing, at the time, as best they could, high quality stuff, to people that were working literally in barns, with very little cover, very little of anything mechanical. It was really a sight to see. They didn't last too long, but it was tough at first. Yeah. It was tough getting good grains, absolutely, and hops. I always had a good hop farmer, so I can't really say that about the hops, but it was difficult to get grains at first, for sure. I was fortunate enough that, like I said, I went and visited every maltster, and I found one maltster back then that was doing things the way that I would do them. You know what I mean? It was on a small scale, and we started working with him right away, and we pretty much used him exclusively for many years.
Do I give him a quick shout out? Are they still around?
Well, that was Ted Hawley at New York Craft Mall.
Yeah, I was going to say there's only a few that we follow as a show. New York Craft Mall looks like they just got the top-notch facility at this point, and very popular, obviously.
Yeah, it's a small facility, and they're a lot like we are. Everything is real craft. It's real hands-on stuff. And there's another good facility, 1886 Craft Malt.
And there's the other one I was going to mention.
Yeah, so that they're a bit bigger, and they do their thing. Teddy's got his specialties at New York Craft Malt that they do. So we do have some more variety. There's a bit more hop farmers, but I still use my same hop farmer. I still use John Kinsella Farms in Wading River.
I was going to say Audis, yeah.
I remember when he brought the Panzer Wolf over from Germany. He was the first guy on Long Island to actually have a harvester.
What a great name for a hop, huh? I mean,
I thought it was a
machine.
tank.
No, it was a machine.
No, not a tank. Got it.
Not a tank. Definitely a.
That makes a lot more sense.
Tractor.
Yeah, he didn't actually have a Panzer tank out east and running over.
It's just mashing all the. It's a wet hop batch. Here it all is.
Yeah, it would have been cool as all hell, but it didn't happen.
Awesome to watch. Terrible to probably have in the end.
That eliminates some questions. Thank you.
Steve's.
Go ahead.
Steve.
We just want to introduce. I want to introduce.
I'm gonna step out of the way because
one of the young ladies that works here. You can take your mask off because she's
so our bartender.
Awesome. This is Haley.
Barista.
And if anybry comes to our tasting room, they'll meet Haley, and she's wonderful, and she's an aspiring hop grower. She's out on the North Fork, And so I just want to introduce her.
Steak sauce.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this. So my wife is getting a second tattoo. She has one right here on the forearm. And you pass by a few times just checking us, seeing how we're doing. And she goes, I so want a sleeve. I want a sleeve. And she liked your artwork a lot. And I said, I'll let her know, but I never did. And there you are. Now I'm like, no.
Let me ask you, do you have a tattoo of a comet?
No.
Or the Centennial Bell.
Haley's comet, right?
I was going with the hop. I thought you were going to go with the hop, the comet hop. Could have done it all.
Well,
Willie Salem sing.
wait, the reason that I introduced Haley is because really here at the brewery, in terms of like the culture, when you come to our tasting room, is to have really awesome, wonderful, kind people that are here to serve you. And, you know, even if people don't know a lot about beer, Belgian beer, we want people to feel comfortable and that they can ask questions. And it's really important to us. You know, a lot of people come here and they just want an IPA, and that's not really, you know, our lane all the time. So Haley is an awesome ambassador for our tasting room. So I just wanted to make sure everybody got to see her.
Very nice, very cordial, answered all my questions, and was apologetic that you had left that day. She's like, I'm so sorry she just left. I'm like, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
It was the one day I took off.
I know. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And listen, it was last minute. I finally got rid of my children, and my wife and I were able to make the run. So it was, like I said, last minute. I wasn't going to go crazy about it. So whatever I got, I got. And I got a delicious beer that I'm almost out of. I'm going to have to start drinking the second in a few minutes.
Oh, I'm so glad. All right, well, I'm going to let Haley go home now. I'll bring Jamie back in.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Haley.
Thanks, Haley.
That was a great dad joke, by the way.
Which one?
Do you have a comet tattoo?
I know.
And see, I was going to go with the hop, Comet Hops.
I like it.
I thought you were going to go with that. Oh, whatever.
It all ties in.
All right.
Certainly.
Really quick, while we got a second, I'm going to show you up on my video here. So this is one of my idols, Mr. Zane Lamprey. And I 100% think, Jamie, that you look like Zane Lamprey.
A little bit.
All right. I appreciate that.
Tell him the Zach Garaff.
I appreciate that. I usually get Zach Galifianakis.
No.
I didn't even know
close.
who it was. Yeah, thank you.
But he's a. I mean, do you know? Are you aware
You're a
of
white
his...
guy with a beard. Is that why you look like Zach Galifianakis?
No. Yeah. But look at this. Look how
I was
close
in Boston,
this
in
is.
Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get a hero. It was like, you know, gyros is 4 a.m, and I'm at the corner, and the guy comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, you're Zach Galifianakis." Who? Because I'm kind of living my own world. I don't get to see too many movies. And he says, "Oh, you're Zach Galifianakis." I said, "No, I'm not." And he says, "Yeah, you are."
Okay.
No, I'm not.
No, you are.
No.
Trust me.
Let's just agree to disagree that I am. Okay. Thanks. So Zane Lamprey, one of my idols, because he had a show called Three Sheets, which was a drinking show.
Great show.
Back on HD Net. And then he also has done many other shows and series since then.
He does look like me.
Yeah. I mean, his beard is unkempt there, but he's done it where it looks just like yours, and he's slicked his hair back just like that. So the eyes, the cheekbones.
A
there
little
you go.
widow's peak.
Yeah, a little bit. It's not, yeah. No, you got a straight hairline. He has a little more of a widow's.
No.
Well, I'm glad, because this hair's going to be gone soon. This is out of necessity. I got to get to a barber, but this whole COVID thing, I just
don't risk it. Just get Rachel to cut your hair. It'll be fine.
He's borrowing my ponytail holders. It's disturbing me.
It's disturbing me too.
I'm equally as disturbed.
We're all disturbed.
Oh man. See, now that I did that, now I can't get my camera back on.
That's
so now you're gonna have to look at Zane
That's
Lamprey
it.
the whole time.
We're done.
That's
this
it.
is it. Just Zane Lamprey's the new co-host.
It's the word with Zane.
I'm in.
Oh no, he is probably a much better host than I am, considering he's hosted real shows.
Yes.
On television.
I think you're doing a great job.
No, get out of here.
Who's going to be Steve McKenna? That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
Who's gonna be
that could be you. You got to grow a bigger beard than that. Steve McKenna's got a huge beard. He's been doing some. Zane's been doing a lot of promotion. He has a couple of clothing lines now, and then he also does. I think he's invested in marijuana out in California, so now he does like a weed show out there. It's crazy. He's just such an entrepreneur, but like a really great television host. He's just got that personality where he just knows what to say, unrehearsed. very candid and knows what he's talking about. So I appreciated him, and I thought you looked a lot like him, and I had to pull that up.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Let's get into some of the beers because you had a really great list, and I didn't have as much time as I'd like to go through that list, meaning drink my way through your list. So, obviously I took the Blanche home, and I had the double while I was there. But there's a lot more to your list right now. So let's go through that, and then I really want to talk about the Wit because
Sure.
it's delicious, and obviously I'm drinking right through it. So, what do we have on tap if we were to come in today?
Well, first and foremost, I think all of our beers, it's almost a continuation of our story from earlier with in terms of the grains and the ingredients that we were getting. We didn't have the ability to get everything that we wanted. We just, we were using what local farmers had, and we still do. So a lot of our beers that we have are developed from that. It's almost like a reverse engineering type process where we take what we can use and then we start making beers from there. So that's how everything started. And what you're drinking, the Rochelle Blanche, was the very first one. We had gotten local wheat from Ted Hawley upstate and his barley, and we put it together with our local hop farmer. And we actually had, and we still do, have a couple of different local coriander farmers. So the only thing that we really got for that doesn't come from a local farmer is the orange peel.
What type of hops are in the Blanche?
The hops that we use in the Blanche is I basically really only have a few different types of hops, and the noble hops that John grows were a few years ago. Mount Hood was the hop. And I really like that hop a lot, but he wasn't able to keep it planted, so he replaced it with Pearl. So that's what I use now. I use a lot of Pearl and any other of the noble hops that he has growing.
So when we talk about noble hops, and just for the people that don't know, what's the difference between a regular standard Citra, or what is that separate from the noble hop range, or what's the classification of a noble?
For me, I equate a noble hop the way that a farmer or somebody that grows a garden would equate to an heirloom tomato. Okay. It's something that's older, that they don't really crossbreed the plant itself. Yep. So in general, most of them come from the Eastern European countries, Czechoslovakia, Germany. And the defining characteristic for me is that the hops are, in terms of their aroma and their taste, they're earthier. The flavor is not as floral. It's more
grassy.
Yeah,
it's hard to say. Earthier is a great term, and people go, "What does that mean?" Well, you don't want to say it tastes like dirt, because that's not very descriptive, and it's not very pleasant to say. But it has that from the earth feel, and that's the point, right?
The word that people use is called terroir. It has the terroir. You can almost taste the where it comes from, as opposed to a more citrusy type of floral type of hop, where the accent is on the aroma of it being like a citrus, or they even put names for it like lemon drop and things like that, right? So the noble hops, really, they're older, generally older varieties, and then you get the derivatives of noble hops like Mount Hood. Those are the hops that they actually do cross pollinate, or they'll cross breed the hop with something that's coming out of the USDA, which I believe Mount Hood is, and a few others that they'll crossbreed it. And a lot of times they'll do that just so that the hop will adapt better to where it's being grown.
Right, and that kind of separates it out from your crossbreeds and the ones that are.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, like every hop farmer, he's got to have a certain yield from every hop plant that he grows, or else the space that he's using to grow the plants and the return that he's getting isn't going to make it viable for him to continue to grow the hop.
Right.
So the hop cones, for example, they have to be a certain weight. They have to be a certain size in order for them to stay. So a lot of the noble hops, what I'm getting at is a lot of the noble hops don't actually have that characteristic. Their hop cones are much smaller, filled with flavor, but much smaller. So you're going to get a lower, as a hop farmer, you're going to get a lower yield from that product. So what does that do? Well, less hop farmers are going to actually grow that plant. Yep. So as me as a consumer, and I go out to try and buy that particular type of hop, I've got less places to go to. And so that's really been the hallmark and the calling card of our brewery from the get-go, is trying to find ingredients that are quality, right? That was from day one, like we had talked about earlier. We need that quality, but then, okay, well, step 2 is variety. And so what we've done here at our brewery is we focused our beers, and getting back to the beer, we focused our beers, or at least I try to focus each particular beer on a particular ingredient. So what is it that we're trying to highlight? Like a play almost. What's the star? Who's the star of the show? Who are the additional actors? Who's the supporting cast? Things like that. Because we really had to do it that way because we didn't have the ability to get these crazy new hops and all the stuff that you can access by using the most commercially available.
Well, I do have to say, I am actually very, very glad that you have not succumbed to the I need to make a hazy IPA.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a challenge too.
Or is it in the fermenter right now?
Or does it come out in 3 days?
Well, Steve, I see your point, Steve, but I don't mind the hazy IPA for what it is, but sometimes it gets a little confusing with what it represents, and that's where I think where the distinction kind of comes in. Any beer that's a good beer is a good beer, right? I mean, I think we could all agree on that. It's just chasing the next thing. It's chasing, and what we decided from the get-go, from day one, was we're not going to chase anything. We're going to do it the way that we want to do it, the way that we want to drink it. And we're going to try and do it the best that we can and emphasize the quality of it. And hopefully that's what's going to keep people coming back, keep people come back. It's the beer drinkers that already know Belgians are going to appreciate them. And the beer drinkers that don't know Belgians are going to taste it and say, wow, yeah, this is good. I could get into this. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but I can.
What is this new flavor in my mouth?
Yeah, what's going on here? But I could get into it, and I still have the same experience as myself. I mean, it's what I live for. It's what I drink for, really. When I go and have different beers, I really want to experiment. I want to push the limits. I want to taste what people are doing that nobody else is doing. I don't.
So I guess what you're saying, it wasn't like a conscious effort not to do it. It's just a focus and a direction on what you do want to do.
Yes.
And it doesn't fall into that path.
Absolutely. It just didn't fall into it. And again, we brew every 2 weeks, so it's got
to fit in the schedule too, yeah.
Right, the schedule. So what do we get? 25, 26, something like that, 27 brews in a year. So if we got 12 on tap, you run through it twice and that's a year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it goes. And also with the fact that, getting back to using local farmers, and they're not going to have all those ingredients that you're going to use. Like we're not going to have wheat starches and things like that to add, this and that. Everything has to be done right from the original grains or from the fruits that we use. And I love that part of it. I love the fact that our Myrtle, which is a blueberry ale.
Love Myrtle. Love it.
It's pink, and the reason why it's pink is the same reason that a rosé wine is pink. It's because the skins of the blueberries and the skins of the grapes, all those tannins, they come out in the fermenter and they impact the color of the beer. So
I'm a very simple person. That's the purple label with the little berries on it, right?
Yeah.
I go by. You have the orange double, the blue triple, the purple, and now the yellow wit. Yeah, I associate color to it. Yeah. And don't say you're not artistic, because I know that the label design is the logo's great, but just simple decisions to be made about color schemes make the world to basic beer drinkers at times, like myself, that just want to say that color represents that beer. I want that.
That's right. That's right. I love and I so appreciate all the wonderful art that's on the cans and the bottles, lately. I just love it. But for us, this is what we do. This is what we want people to understand. Like when you see, well, this is an apricot beer, we want to see a big fat apricot right on the front of the label, and we want to emphasize, well, these apricots come from this farm. You should go there because not only do they sell apricots, but they've got a whole farm stand, or they've got pies that people come from miles around to sit and wait in line to buy their pies. And if you like this farmer, then just go down the road because the one down the road's just as good as that one. They might not be as famous, but the blueberries are awesome and all that. So it's a way for us to say, hey, if you like this beer, if you like our apple ale, go to the orchard, go to Richter's in Northport, go there. They've got peaches 1 week a year in first week of August.
Mackinac.
There's a window. There's nothing else.
Yeah, it's going for the Mackinacs. It totally is. It's just that.
It's somewhat challenging. It's somewhat challenging at the tasting room though when you have a beer on, like the blueberry beer, when people can drink blueberry beers that are not made with real blueberries. So it's a real different animal and they're expecting something different and they're not really sure exactly what they're getting. So you really have to educate people and that takes effort.
Feel free to call anybody out, Rachel.
Yeah.
Not calling anybody out.
Well, that's why you have Haley there, right? I mean, that's part of her job is to be that first contact for the education.
Absolutely.
Saying,
and when it comes down to, people are used to drinking artificial flavors.
Yes.
It's
and
true.
when you do teach them, like, well, this is the way a grape or a blueberry is supposed to, the flavor is supposed to be like in a beer, this is it. And people are like, really? Wait, I don't know. But yes, once they get it though, and once they realize, wow, this is a whole lot better than that artificial, grape flavor or blueberry flavor.
Syrup.
Yeah, pretty much.
Syrup.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's a good thing, and we like to roll with the seasons with different beers. So we just came out with an apple ale.
Yes, and I wanted to talk about that because I saw it advertised and I was hoping to get a bottle of that, but I know, like you said, you're in a.
I can't believe. Do you know I work 7 days a week just to plug myself?
Well, I'm not complaining about it. I'll find it and I'll come up and get it again. It's fine.
Well, you got to come to Holbrook. I'm there all the time.
They're all there, yeah, okay.
So
But yeah, that's the one that was advertised, and I was so I'm not a huge Apple fan, but my wife would have loved that. She would have been all over that.
I saved this one is for you. Come back.
All right, thank you. I'll be up there soon.
This is the Roxbury Russet apple.
Ooh.
Now, I didn't even know this until I started talking to the guys at the orchard. The Roxbury Russet apple originally came over with like the Pilgrims, and they grew it in Massachusetts. It's the oldest continually grown commercial apple in the United States.
Wow.
And they grow it right over here at Richter's. So when we made this beer, now another thing that we really didn't talk about was our beers take a little bit of time to make. So this beer actually sat in the fermenters for quite a while on the apples the apple. It's actually cider. So we can use apples, but they press the apples for us, and we get it from them right before they put it through the pasteurization process. So even having the Roxbury Russet apple in here is a great thing. What's the challenge? Well, the next year, the Roxbury Russet may have already been harvested, and now we're dealing with this type of apple. So what are the sugar levels in that apple? What are the acidity levels? This and that you start to try to make consistency a real priority. That's probably one of our biggest concerns as well.
But it's also what makes craft, because you can expect with that word that you're not going to get that consistency, which means you're going to get, and not to be negative, but to say one batch to somebody would be great, but the next batch wouldn't. But that's what makes it craft, and that's what makes it unique. And the hand making of that particular brew in that year change things, or like you said, the apples change completely. There's nothing you can do about it except go about your recipe, and then and acceptance on some ends, and not quite the expectation from people who had it the prior year. But again, that's what makes it unique, and I think that's what keeps people like your brewery continually searching for that, as balanced a beer as possible, or cider, or whatever it might be.
Oh, absolutely. And, and me as a brewer, I'm always looking for inspiration, and I kind of go like my eyes wide open. And when I was in Portland, Oregon, I was at Cascade, which is famous for their sour beers. Cascade is basically called the House of Sour. And it was just so eye-opening to sit down at a bar stool there and to look up at their menu, and you would see blueberries from 2012, blueberry 2013, blueberry 2014, and you'd have figs 2012, and almost it was like this layered effect where you could vertically try different beers. So I'm going to try the 2014 fig. Like wine. Just like wine.
Right.
Yeah.
People don't realize just the weather, just whether it was a wet season, a dry season, overly hot, cool, will change the aspect.
Huge fires in the northern part of your state.
Yeah, all your crops are on fire, and now it's smoky.
Everything tastes smoky and ashy.
Be great for a porter, but not so much for this fruit cider.
Oh, sure. And, and we've got a great honey guy in Mattituck, right? So are you going to use the early season honey, or are you going to use the late season honey? It's just
what
like,
did the bees eat? What were they on? Wildflower, clover.
Sure.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, you're making these what normal. Well, I wouldn't even say normal. I would just say your average craft beer drinker, your casual craft beer drinker, would say, "Holy crap! Like what's going on here?" They wouldn't have a clue about that, and that's the point. Like, there's so many elements that are variable throughout the stages that, let's say you have the 2012 blueberry. To me, that would be delicious. And the 2014, it was too sweet. It's crazy to see how the palates change and how the years change other people's palates and bring them back in.
Absolutely. And to us, that's really the crux of it. That's what we really want people to understand, is that they're drinking local, and that they're drinking the terroir year by year. It's always something that is changing and evolving and developing.
But New York.
But
always New York.
Yeah, but quintessentially, it's local, and that's really it.
What I'm really interested in, I saw it on the tap list when I was up there, is you have a nitro porter. Am I right about that?
So what we did here at our tasting room is I allowed, we have 12 taps in total, but we broke them up into threes. So 3 of the taps will dispense nitrogen. Okay. And what I wanted to do there was I really just wanted to accentuate beers that, again, it's like eyes wide open. You learn from here, you learn from there. What I wanted to do was accentuate the fact that you could take something, any beer really, or almost any beer, have it dispensed mostly on CO2, and then get the feeling, or the sensory feelings of it being on nitro. I was a place down in DC many years ago, and every beer that they had on CO2, they also dispensed on nitro.
Huh.
And it was just like the 2013, 2014, thick beer or whatever. This was the same kind of concept, where you're just like, all right, you can have this beer on CO2, but if you try it on nitro, you're going to get a totally different taste, and totally different, even beyond the taste, it's more about the mouthfeel. How it feels on
tiny bubbles. I call it tiny little bubbles.
Even the density of it, where the nitrogen makes it feel almost a little bit heavier, the way that a Guinness almost feels heavier on your palate.
Right.
So
what's on nitro right now?
Yeah. So what's on nitro right now?
The brown ale is
brown.
on.
It wasn't the porter. It was a brown. There you
go. So we have a brown ale, which we did.
The boys know I have a big affirmation for browns, so that would have been my next beer if I had 5 more freaking minutes. My wife was like, "We gotta go pick up our daughter." I'm like, "Damn it, get the brown." I'll get it up next time.
And that's part of the English beers that we started to make. So we were strictly Belgians for many years, and we're starting doing our English ales primarily through the English yeast strain that we procured. So the brown ale is one of them. The Steam Home is a blonde ale, which we've done as well. And they all come from the same deep ascent yeast strain that we use.
Are we using standard grain for the brown, what you typically find in a brown?
The brown ale that I'm making is here. I like to keep it more of an old English style brown ale. So you're going to get a little bit less roasty flavors, and it's going to be a little bit more fruity. English yeast strains tend to kind of accentuate the fruit a little bit, the cherry a little bit.
Right.
So I kind of eased off on the roasted grains and went with dark grains, but something that brings out a little bit more of the fruitiness. So our brown ale is a little bit on the fruitier side, and I wanted to contrast that against our porter. So the porter, which is going to be coming out next week, is a little bit more has a more roasty flavor to it, more of a traditional English style porter, not too dark, but definitely darker than a brown ale, roastier than a brown ale.
And now is that porter? I'm sorry, the stout. You said porter, right?
So the porter is coming out, and then the brown ale is what's on is on the nitro line right now.
Is the porter a recurring brew, or is that a new one?
These are all new beers on the English side because these are all coming from our deep ascent yeast, which is our yeast strain that we recovered from a ship that came.
All right, you started it.
Is it time to go get it?
You got to give us everything about the system.
Well, wait, let me finish this off because I'm gonna crack that ship.
I gotta go get mine.
Yeah, we gotta go get our ship here because this is gonna take the last hour to talk about. Because you think I had questions before? Just wait till we start talking about a ship where you get yeast strain from. So
right, we'll pour ourselves some.
Yes,
too.
Yeah, absolutely. We're only gonna need a little bit of that right now.
Yeah, because we've been talking about this for a while, that we wanted to have you on, and one of the main reasons was we knew about this yeast strain that you procured from a bottle that was underneath down in the ocean for a very long time.
That's true. So I don't know if we can see it here. The reflection over, but this is the ship up here. It's a Cunard luxury liner. So Cunard, for those that aren't familiar with the shipping lines or the luxury shipping lines, Cunard and is probably the most famous shipping line. So back in the Gilded Age, the late 1800s, and then into the 1900s, if you wanted to get from Europe to America in style, you would take one of these luxury liners, like the Titanic. No different than the Titanic. And every year there was an organization out of France that would award what was called the Blue Riband. And the Blue Riband was given to the fastest luxury liner of the year. So if you made the cross-Atlantic trip, and they'd have two different ribbons, the blue ribbon, they'd give one that went from England to New York, and then another one that went, obviously from New York back to England. The Oregon, which was constructed in 1883 and sank shortly thereafter in 1886, won the Blue Riband twice.
How about Nikola Tesla working on the boat?
Yeah, so it's a pretty famous ship. It was built at a time where much like today, where we had a lot of new technologies that we really weren't sure about if they were going to work or not.
Right.
So they added things like steam power. They added a steam powered engines, and propeller to the ship, even though they didn't think it was going to really work. So what they do as well, they added 4 masts to the ship. And interestingly enough, the masts were never, ever unfurled while the ship was sailing. Just the steam worked, but they weren't sure. Another thing that the ship had was it was built out of iron. And that's really important because at the time, Carnegie and the steel empire were becoming the go-to material for shipbuilding. And the construction people at Cunard felt that it would be better to use iron because iron was a more traditional method of shipbuilding, and the money that they saved on the using iron instead of steel They put that into a bunch of unique wood that they got from what was at the time the territory of Oregon. So all of the wood that they used for all the decks and all the adornments was procured from Oregon, and it was
SAT
so
word, by the way, adornments. Go look it up, everybody. That's a great word.
It was so
it's what it is.
Yeah. So they named the ship the Oregon after all this wood that they bought, or that they put on the ship in lieu of having a steel hull on the ship. And it's so significant because the ship actually sunk because it was hit by a much smaller 50-foot schooner. And it was hit at such an angle that the schooner, I mean, imagine a piece of iron, right? It's kind of brittle, it cracks. Yeah. And sure enough, the hull cracked and the ship sank.
Whoops.
After it was hit.
Where did it sink? Was it close? It's in the Northeast here?
The Oregon is about 21 miles off of what we have here is Captree.
Okay.
Captree State Park. So it's about 21 miles south.
Okay.
How deep down is it in?
The ship itself is 130 feet down to the sand, and it's mostly broken down. So it doesn't really look like a ship anymore. It just looks like a pile of junk that's in a ship form. And the big pieces are still visible. And what's interesting about that is there's one huge piece that's down there. It's the size of a school bus, a large yellow school bus. It's huge. And we always use it that when we come up on the wreck itself, we'll throw the anchors over, and we'll actually throw some divers over into the water, and we'll anchor up to this piece. We didn't know what it was. It was just a big piece. Well, it turns out that this was the dynamo of the ship. So if you're not familiar with what a dynamo is, it's basically like the battery charger or battery generator for a direct current electrical system.
Alternator.
So why is that significant? Because the Oregon was one of the first ships that was ever outfitted with electricity. They had electric lights on the ship.
Wow.
And who installed the lights? It was Thomas Edison.
Wow.
Edison, yeah, he was a proponent of a direct current electrical system.
Sure was.
Very unsafe, very dangerous. So
shocking elephants and whatnot.
Yeah. In 1884 or 1885, I'm not sure which year it was.
That sketchy alternating current. It'll fucking kill you.
1884, 1885, the ship. Well, let me take a step back. We didn't know what this piece was on the bottom until we got a call from a producer out in California.
Hold on, time out. Can I just go back? You dove? You're the one that dove down there?
I've dove on the ship many, many, many times.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely. But recently I was mostly working in the brewery. So I've taken a couple of years off of diving. And while I was not diving, the area where the bottles were kind of opened up so that we had access to them finally. So we had to do a couple of things. We had to maneuver some things, but we finally got access to them. But the getting back to Edison, he was in a bind because this ship in 1885 was in New York Harbor, and the electrical system was broken. It was down, and they were set to sail, and now they're a day behind, 2 days behind, 3 days behind, and they're calling up Tesla, every day. Hey, you got to send an electrician out here. You got to send an engineer, yada yada. He's got nobody. All of a sudden, a young scientist walks into his office from like Hungary or wherever. He didn't know the guy, but the guy had a letter in his hand from a colleague of Edison's in Europe saying you have to hire this person who's the most ingenious person we've ever met, blah blah blah.
Is it Hertz?
Well, I'll tell you. Edison looks at him, doesn't even know his name. He says, "Can you fix a dynamo?" The guy says, "I can fix anything." So Edison, he dispatches him immediately to the New York Harbor, to the port. It was, Pier whatever, 36, whatever. And within a couple of days, this young scientist, he fixes the whole direct current system, no fanfare, and the ship's on its way. Edison writes a letter of commendation for him and hires him. And that scientist's name was Nikola Tesla.
I think it was Tesla.
That was Tesla's first interaction with Edison. And for anything, anybody that knows.
Was it the last positive one?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it may have been. It may
Court
have been.
cases in the early 1900s really set that relationship back a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. But that whole relationship spawned from the Oregon and from this time in history. When technology was just at the forefront of its day, and then you had the application of that technology in commercial use. Almost like the guinea pig of the time, and it really was.
Yeah.
So we got a call from producers out in California saying, "What do you know about this piece here?" And we didn't know anything about it. Oh, that piece? Oh, the bus? You mean the bus? And they tell us that's the dynamo. And we want to send out Henry Rollins. He's doing a show, 10 things you don't know about, blah, blah, blah. And it's 10 things you don't know about Edison and Tesla. Well, that was one of the things people didn't know about Edison and Tesla. So they were going to do it on the show. He doesn't know how to scuba dive. Yeah, is anybody, you guys familiar with Henry Rollins?
Do you know Henry Rollins?
Yeah.
Sure do.
Yeah.
So he comes out, they get him scuba dive, they get him certified, the whole crew.
I can imagine him.
And they do the whole show, with the cameras and everything on the dynamo. And this was about maybe at this point, maybe 9 years ago. And they do it off my buddy's boat, who has a boat we dive out of, Tom McCarthy, East Coast wreck diving. And from there, the legend of the Oregon just started to grow even more and more. And people have recovered these bottles in the past. People have made beer from those bottles in the past, but it's never been a commercial endeavor where we actually took this yeast, we cleaned the yeast to the best of our abilities so that it was, viable for what we wanted to use it for.
Wait, clean the yeast. So what goes into cleaning the yeast? Not gonna take each
scrub them down.
Little tiny scrub.
Nice little bath.
Yes, they all need a bath.
Put a little steak sauce on it.
Because you
don't forget to use the loofah.
Yeah, you really can't sanitize them in a way that you're gonna kill them. So there's got to be a method to this.
Well, you're not half wrong there. It's almost like survival of the fittest in a sense, where you're getting rid of the ones that aren't as strong as the other ones, and then from there, once you get it down to, we usually in an application like this, we'll break it down to a single cell. So it'll be a single yeast cell that we then repropagate up from, and that's what happened here. So we recover these bottles, and these bottles are hundreds of years old, and they're not packaged in the manner that they would be today. They're handmade, and they've got a cork in them, and they probably had a wrapper or something around them. So there is saltwater intrusion, and a lot of things are going on.
Now, do you know where they originally came from?
Still no.
Good
No.
question.
That's a great question. That is the $1,000.
question.
That for us, that's the $1,000 question.
We'll explain why, because.
Well, the reason why is because back in the day that they were making these beers, they almost did things the same way that we do things now. They recycled the bottles.
Yep.
So a lot of the bottles, they were so expensive. They were all made by hand. Yep. So the bottles were let's say the ship went down in 1886. So we can assume this beer came from about 1886. The bottles themselves come from anywhere from 1863 to like 1885. So we don't know. Our assumption was we'll find the bottles, and then we'll find the bottle maker, and then we'll find the person that was making the beer with that particular bottle maker. And that's how we were gonna, go back.
There's no archives like manifests or anything that
manifest. Still can't find it. It's out there, and we're gonna find the ship's manifest. We just haven't found it yet. We've been all over. We've been to the National Archives. We've been over to England. We've had people I've actually had friends in England that have helped me with this to try and find different views. Ship's manifest, in my opinion, at this point would be the only way that we could tell what was on that ship.
Yep.
Because we don't just have a bottle. We have bottles. Some are dark, some are light, some are blonde, some are like stout looking.
Wow.
We've got bottles.
So just to give all the viewers at home a little insight. So this is a bottle that was recovered from Lion Brewery. It was dug up in a basement in Brooklyn or New York City, somewhere in that area. And so Lion Brewery, I have the little paper to authenticity paper. This brewery started in about 1850, if I'm not wrong, then you could stop me. Anyone on Facebook fact-checking me, you can go screw yourself. But it closed in about 1940s or something like that. But this one's dated in the late 1800s, so you can see very, very thick glass, extremely thick. And like you said, Jamie, it more than likely had a cork in it, and then it was, basically handed down and reused for the next people. People would collect their beer bottles, bring them back to the brewery to get the next set. It was almost like the deposit, where the deposit came from.
Mm-hmm. And depending on where you lived is the kind of beer that you would get. So Bass Ale was the world's largest brewery at the time.
Yep.
So we can probably assume a lot of this is Bass Ale. But if you lived in London, the Bass Ale that you got would be different than if you lived in another part of England. And the reason for that was because the brewery would make the beer, and then they would ship it in mass to bottlers and packagers. And so on the labels, they'd make a big deal out of where it was packaged. That was a big part of it. Brewed by Bass Ale, packaged at, XYZ Packaging London, versus in Southampton. So the beers were packaged by all of these different packagers. And all these different packagers were using all of these recycled bottles. So to go back for us and find, we can make some assumptions. We can say, yeah, okay, Bass Ale was the number one, Guinness was number two, Sept was number three, right? And I've got a really light beer that looks like a real Sept beer. I've got a bunch of more brownish ales that are dead ringers for Bass, and darker ones, which are probably Guinness. But can we say with any confirmation or definitiveness? No.
And there's no way to send it to a lab no. Because it's been so old and, like I said, saltwater intrusion, that there'd be no way to compare it to compare those really dark beers to Guinness today.
You'd have to, it would be like finding a needle in a haystack, because they'd have to compare that strain to every single strain that's out there, I guess. I've asked, this is the same question I've asked. And the gist of it is you're never going to find the answer genetically.
Over time anyway.
Yeah, at least at this point with science the way it is, you're not going to find the answer genetically. It'll be almost impossible. The term he used was finding a needle in a haystack.
Here's the real question. Did you drink any of those beers straight from the bottle?
Oh, yeah, we drink everything. We drink everything we get. We get wine bottles, we get whiskey bottles, like different ships. We have a rum runner that's right off the coast here. Yep. That was literally during Prohibition. It was running Jack Daniels and rum and all these other things. So yeah, anytime that we get something, it always tastes the same. It always tastes like nasty salt water.
Oh, okay. That was my next question. Have you ever gotten anything that's been drinkable?
It's not going to kill you.
So why not try it?
It's not going to kill you, but it's kind of, it's almost a rite of passage. Yeah. And it goes with anything. Like, when we get on the boat and we've got, there's been times where we get out and let's not even talk about beer. You'll jump off the ship and you go down there and you look at the seafloor and it looks like there's dinner plates as far as you can see. And you're like, what the heck are these things? There's thousands of them. And you get close and you go, oh, scallops. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, all right. So there's scallops everywhere. So we'll pick the scallops and we'll harvest them and we'll bring them up. And everything that we bring back on board, we eat. We eat right there or drink it, whatever it is. It's just because it's like right from the ocean. It's a rite of passage. It's in many ways, depending on what it is, beer isn't so good, but the scallops are delicious.
Bring a little bacon on with you. You're not going to find that on the seafloor, and you get some bacon
straight up,
on the grid.
Just cut it out and eat it.
I would imagine there's just probably so much stuff. Was there anything that was crazy beyond the beer that you found that was like a real find?
Definition of what's important to me. I'm a big history buff, so things that are historical are important. So we'll find just it could be anything. It could be buttons off of a uniform.
That's pretty cool.
Like Marines, or it could be. We've gone down. We've pulled portholes up, boom, 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 one after another, and it shouldn't take anything because you're not leaving anything for the next person to see. But the reality of a very dangerous and destructive place, and over time, these ships are getting pummeled.
Everything's going to get buried.
In fact, they actually sink. They sink deeper into the sand. So get that, and you're caught taking things that aren't given to you by a certified archaeologist's basement, you know, they'll be all presented nicely, but they're private collections.
Right.
You know, and my hope really is that if anything comes of this, that there is a more of an opening to all the artifacts that are covered around Long Island, the Andrea Doria, you know, the Oregon. There's just so much history here that either is, and a lot of these divers, that it's a timing issue. It's a timing and technology issue. When certain technologies made these ships accessible, these were the guys that buy their kids because they don't even know what it is, you know, put in an attic somewhere. So a lot of this has to do with, for us, we're recreating history by making the beer, but we're also trying to raise awareness of the history of it and the nautical history of Long Island.
Sure that I educate the students that I have, 11th, 12th graders, in what rich history, even like Nikola Tesla left his thumbprint on here. Weidencliff, you have of the Sayville Communications Department, because they thought they were spies for the German government. When really it was just a scientific experiment. All those people were brought in to conduct experiments through Nikola Tesla's, I guess, base camp or whatever that was there. And so there's some crazy ties to both. You know, everyone's probably read electricity through the air. Most people have seen Nikola Tesla with the big bolts of lightning. They've seen the movie The Prestige. You kind of have this idea of him, but he had it bigger and better. He shot for the stars. A lot of his experiments ended up boiling down to what we know as our wireless communication today. It started with the AM and FM and then built its way up into what we have for cell phone service and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and all these frequencies that they kind of uncovered. And again, I mentioned Hertz before because he's really one of the founders of where, you know, some of these research and writings began. It's who influenced Tesla. So to make the connection to the beer world, you know, we've all had beer that came before us and we've all had things. I guess we're always trying to carry on the legacy of what came before us, and you going down and getting those bottles, grabbing that yeast strain and reshaping it into a beer today does the same thing for the beer industry that these guys have all done for our current technology.
Okay, so what I'm really interested in, and I don't mean to cut you off, how are you still, because you're using it, and how did you decide how to use this yeast? What temperature to use it at? You know, did you have an idea how it might flocculate?
Cursing over there.
Hey, don't you?
That's the F word. We don't use the F word around here.
So
I mean, these are everything you had no clue. So I mean, the experimentation part of this really was like, okay, here we go.
Here we go.
God damn, it's
good.
good.
No clue.
It's really good.
Just keep an eye on it. You know, keep an eye on it. I just test it over and over. pH, you know, gravity, everything. You know how it's behaving. But what I wanted to say was, imagine if Nikola Tesla was a beer drinker.
Oh,
right?
Oh, my
Imagine
goodness.
Nikola Tesla was a beer drinker.
Who knows?
Who knows? He could have been having that beer on the Oregon.
There you go.
Yeah, after he a hard day's work, he just hey, I just fixed the whole damn ship.
He could have touched it.
Have
He
one of
could
those
have touched
beers.
it. Yeah, it could have been his mix 6.
Yeah,
You never know.
Well, you know. What's my point? My point is the connection is there. You know, it's there. So in terms of how we're going to use the yeast, I had no idea. So, but what did I know? I knew that I could make a base malt, right? Just a pale ale, and make a base wort unfermented.
Woo! I don't have the sound machine. Usually I have a sound machine that does our can open. In your case, I do have the bottle open from before, so I'm gonna probably isolate that bottle open later.
Oh,
Nice.
we'll donate something. Yeah,
There you go.
We'll make a
air horn.
Yeah. Cowbells.
Cowbell.
There.
More
Cowbells.
cowbell.
Yeah, it's more hockey, more cowbell.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's all we did. We just brewed with it, you know, and the first time I brewed with it, you could smell it when it's fermenting. Like, this is English ale. Diacetyl's coming off, and, you know, you just knew it was English ale. And then when it finished out, the gravity that it finishes out at, you know it's English ale. It was actually a bit high. I was really worried that we were talking earlier about cleaning the yeast, and there's a couple terms of vitality, which is like how still going to work. Those are the two big things when you're talking about yeast. So I didn't have much vitality or viability when I originally started working with this yeast here. It was pretty tough to work with. So the first beers that we made were test batches.
Right.
And well, yeast is a living organism, and the one thing that you can do is you can train it. You can train it, and it trains itself in terms of it wants to live in the environment with which you provide. So if it's living in your brewery, well, it's going to eventually adapt to the circumstances, or the stresses that you put it under. And so what happened here was we worked with the yeast to get it to attenuate out, which meant it fermented a bit longer. The yeast would start to eat all those sugars, and then all of a sudden it would die out. And so it took a long time. It took a long time to work with the yeast to bring it up to a point where we wouldn't have to add an additional yeast. So that was a challenge that we first started with that particular yeast strain. But as we worked with it, we made it more viable. We were actually able to bring it back down to a level that was more consistent with where an English yeast strain known primarily as being they early flock. So what they do is they don't eat as much of the sugars. We call it like a sugar kind of a ladder, where you've got really simple sugars at the bottom, like your sucrose and your dextrose, and then you've got really complex sugars at top. And the yeast, its viability will determine how far up that ladder it can eat. How complex can it eat as a sugar. And English beers in general are not known as doing that very well. They eat a lot of the simple sugars, but they leave a lot of the complex sugars, which wind up adding what we call body, mouthfeel. Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but then that leaves behind like that yeasty, bready taste, correct?
Yeah. So in terms of the flavor profile, you've got a lot of fruit and you've got a lot of breadiness, and that comes from the products that the yeast make as it ferments, byproducts of esters and phenols like diacetyl, which it produces a lot of. So my goal as a brewer is to limit all of those phenolics so that the beer does not become cloying, where it means that the flavor, once you drink it, you want the flavor to be there, you want to taste it, you want to enjoy it, but then you want it to dissipate and kind of go away. And that'll make you be like, oh, wow, I want another sip. As opposed to a beer that the residual sugars and the phenolics and the esters aren't reabsorbed, what happens is the phenolics will actually stay in the beer, and it'll leave a little bit of a slick flavor, a little bit. And when you taste it, it'll stay on your tongue and it'll last, and it'll be there, for 5 or 10 minutes. So our goal was to really try to avoid that, which is the easy thing to fall into with English beers. It's hard to not avoid. So that was really the goal.
Yeah, what's the process of multiplying this, procuring it so you have enough to do these test batches and then have enough in the end that's trained to do your larger batches?
Sure.
How does that work? I mean, that just seems like you're putting it in and then you take it out and go, okay, you sit over there, you're pretty good.
I keep, for lack of a better term, like a mother clone. Okay, and when we want to brew, we'll pull a little bit off of that, and we'll propagate it up.
I see you had the mother. So this is what I'm trying to get to. So you have the mother clones. How do you make more of them? How does that yeast double and triple in size and batch so you have more to work with?
Yep, the yeast double and triple in size through budding. It's called, and it's a process whereas the yeast itself will grow an identical yeast will actually bud off of that yeast. The problem there is once the yeast that buds off of the original yeast creates a little bit of a scar there. So over time, the original yeast is not going to be able to continually make new yeast. At some point, it's not going to become viable anymore. And so that's really the crux of what we're talking about here. We're trying to always have viable yeast that has, in a literal sense, room on its cell wall to allow budding of additional cells. And we want a lot of them too, because when we put our sugars into our fermenters, we really want that that propagation to ramp up. We want the growth to be exponential.
Jesus.
Okay, so we need two things. We need enough yeast, and we need the yeast to be really viable and vital. The vitality of the yeast, it's really important.
So how are you extracting that mother yeast out of those bottles found on the bottom of the ocean?
What we did was I worked with a friend of mine. So back in the early 90s, there was a diver, great guy, still around. He works with me on this. He found the original bottles. Well, they weren't original. I'm sure people had them, but he was the first guy to come up with the idea. He's going to make a little bit of beer. So what he did was he made a 5-gallon batch in a bucket in the back of the dive shop. But his good beer.
Welcome to my dive shop, and I'm also homebrewing in the back.
Yeah, I think it was somebody else's dive shop, as a matter of fact.
Right next to the bright tank is the flippers. Go ahead, grab those, and we'll be on the road.
Yeah, pretty much. He had a background in microbiology.
Ah, okay, that helps.
So
you're a scientist. You got something there.
And he had the original yeast strains, so that when we procured ours, he was extremely helpful. He was vital in terms of us being able to access the yeast out of the bottles themselves. And basically, I mean, what it comes down to really, it wasn't anything more than us pulling the
cell by cell.
More or less, yeah. Absolutely, cell by cell.
That's crazy.
Over and over again. So
that seems very tedious. I don't even like separating out my large and small paper clips.
Yes.
I'm serious. I'm not kidding. I hate it. I look at my box and I go, how did these small paper clips get in this big paper clip box? Get it out.
We're going through all of this effort without knowing, what was going to come of it. That was the biggest, that was the biggest.
Now, more importantly, so you guys are finally going to release this beer.
Oh,
Yes.
boy.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Yes,
Thank you,
Steve.
So
I wanted to hear more science, Steve.
Well, I did too, but more importantly, people need to know about this beer because
Absolutely.
I mean,
so we had this beer.
I drank a whole lot already, and
yeah, I'm almost done with the bottle. I finished it off.
I'm feeling very good.
Yes, me too.
Delicious.
Yeah, thanks. It took a little while, but thank you a bit, and it makes it a lot easier if it's nice to drink rather than tasting like medicine. Yeah.
Which it does not. It actually has a really great backbone. It's very delicious. It's also not. It's not like one of those typical pails where it's just light and crisp and like great, that's fine. This has some real like balls on it. I do like it a lot.
As we spoke of earlier, bready, earthy. It has all those.
Fucking beer.
And the story behind it is one thing, and then to have a really, really good tasting beer to follow up with it.
Yeah, you can have a story, but if the beer's no good, you're like, that's a great story. All right, I'm moving on. This is worth a story to match it up with it. So tell us a little bit about just the process of this, because obviously we got into a lot of detail about the yeast. So tell us what else is going into this. Is there more New York State ingredients involved here?
Everything we do is New York State ingredients. So particularly in this deep ascent here, I was shooting for traditional, historically accurate English ale. So back in the 1800s.
Yes.
That's it. That's the shit. So if you'll notice on the label, there's a flag at the top of the mast.
Yes, with the North Star.
So that's a nautical flag for England. That's an English nautical flag. And in this painting, which was done by a famous artist back during at that time, the flag is upside down, and that was they were signaling distress.
Distress. Right.
Distress. Yep, they were signaling for distress.
I'll be saving that empty bottle. And you know what? I liked it so much that when I go up and get the second bottle, I'll be drinking that too.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we do this again and we'll come up with new conversations and new subjects, what I'll do is I'll package the Deep Ascent in the original English bottles.
Yeah, you still have that. So that was a question I had before, and I didn't ask it. You still have all the original ones.
My gosh, we probably got about another dozen bottles to go through. Absolutely.
Unopened.
Unopened.
Wow.
Unopened.
Wow.
You never know what's.
And are those cork and cage as well, or what?
No cages.
Cork.
Just
cork.
cork.
Corks.
Yeah, it's a thin opening, and it's thinner than a wine cork.
Wow.
Huh.
Like a pinner almost. It's kind of
thin openings. Yeah. And again, no markings because they had a wrapper, and the corks themselves are.
How would you would you use a corkscrew to open?
Could you do it? Yeah, maybe. I mean, you got to imagine it's very brittle. The cork is brittle. The glass, the glass is very strong, but the cork is very brittle. So even if you don't keep it properly, example, you should keep wax. The corks are really very fragile, and they'll dry out. They're very fragile. They'll dry out. They'll start to break apart. And you could actually smell the salt water.
Especially after a century of being underwater and being wet the whole time, immediately salt water will dry out.
Oh, absolutely. And it's anything that you get that you recover as an artifact, you really want to take care of right away, because the environment that it's been in is just such a bad environment that you want to make sure that if there's anything you want to keep, make sure that you take care of it right away, or else once it gets to the surface, forget about it. It'll fall apart.
So you're coming out with this beer on Monday?
Sunday.
Sunday.
So why Sunday?
Well, Sunday, it's close to World Maritime Day.
Ah.
It's not exactly World Maritime Day, because that doesn't fall on a good day when people are off of work.
Right. Smart
we're not
move.
doing World Maritime Day?
There's got to be a little marketing involved here. We can't just willy-nilly.
So if you want to see these bottles will be on display at the bottle release of Deep Ascent Pale Ale, which will be happening at our tasting room on Sunday.
Probably guessing there's not a whole lot of these bottles to be had. So if you really want them, you better come and get them.
Because we're already reserving our bottles. So right away, y'all ain't getting these bottles until we get some bottles, motherfuckers.
That's true. I did that with a bunch of other beers along the Deep Ascent line. So
what have you got planned so far?
Like different adjuncts or different styles?
So one of the variants. I are the divers that we worked with, and the divers that helped us, and then my friends, guys that I dive with. My vision of what I wanted to do if we had found these bottles that were still intact, because we had been diving for years, and all we would ever find are broken bottles, because everything was always broken. You'd find a piece of this, a piece of that, and I let it be known, when we find these bottles, we're gonna make a beer out of it. We're gonna make a commercial beer out of it. So all of my dive friends, they helped me, and because of that, every beer that comes out in this line is either going to be a tribute to them, or it's going to be something that they help collaborate with in terms of the beer and the name themselves. So Captain Pat Rooney, who was one of the divers, he wanted to do a nice porter. So our next beer coming out is going to be Captain Pat's Porter, which is just a nice English style porter with our Deep Ascent yeast strain. Again, like we were talking about earlier, not as roasty as a lot of American porters, but darker and nice and dark fruity flavors, the way that an English porter would have been back then. We have our blonde ale, Steam Home, which is a la Captain Tom McCarthy. Has a dive boat out of Freeport, but he was also part of the St. James Brewery family for a little while. He used to work with us early on when we first started. And Tom was still is, he's a big inspiration for what we do. And Tom was the very first diver that he was the reason why I found out that area was accessible to the ship, and those bottles were accessible, and that we were going to be able to get them. So all the divers that we use, we work with them, and the beers that we're making are going to be a tribute to them, and we're going to work with them. So
very good.
I like that. That's a really cool type of thing to do. And I was going to ask about where you're going to do any variants, and obviously you are. And I mean, with that yeast, you pretty much can do what you want right now, because it's new. It's it's nobody else is using it, and you could figure out again doing an ale, a porter, a stout. I mean, that's great.
It seems to like they would fit a lot of the styles with what it's giving off, in addition to the style that it's with.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that's a testament to how things change, especially the yeast over time. What they considered to be the yeast strain back in the 1800s is definitely different than what it is today, no doubt about it. So, and again, just nice to bring a little bit of history back, because it's something, like you said, it's something new and it's something different, and nobody else is doing it. And that makes us happy on many fronts that we're able to bring something, something that's local, something that's important to us as Long Islanders, and it's
Oh, you brought back history.
You
did.
There's a lot of Long Island history that people tend to forget and tend to neglect, and don't realize how important this area was to the entire makeup of the country, in a sense of the like we were talking about before, Edison and Tesla, and of course just the New York port, or New Amsterdam back in the day, and how much foreign shipping came through, and how much that contributed to the growth of America. It's an amazing tale. I'm also a history buff. I love Gettysburg. I love the early Civil War stuff. Would love to be able to dive one day. I mean, I was a swimmer in high school.
To the swimming part of it.
Really?
I can't swim. No, I'm a terrible swimmer.
I love snorkeling. Like, that's one of my favorite things, and I bought a full snorkel mask to, like, whenever we go to these Caribbean islands, I go way past where I'm supposed to go. I'm like, I'm looking for stuff. Like, give me stuff. I'm very just trying to get educated and find new things. I have a passion for learning and education. So
Cool. That's
Well,
great.
you got to be an explorer. You have to be an explorer. You always have to find new things and kind of live your life with your eyes wide open. That's really been kind of how I go about it, because there's so much stuff out there, so much interesting stuff. You never know. You never know where this crazy life will take you.
Absolutely. What'd you say, Steve?
I said like steak sauce.
Steak sauce drink. You only said it twice. No one's gonna get drunk off your two
I
steak
said
sauce.
it about 9 times tonight.
Day.
Steak sauce.
It's like Pee Wee Herman.
The word of the day.
Yeah, Jamie, Rachel, what besides the upcoming beer release of Deep Ascent? And by the way, if you don't go out there and get it, you're out of your mind, because
10
it
a.m.
is.
on Sunday.
Sorry, it's delicious. My wife just texted me, and I'm yelling down here. Sorry. I know I have a hard time hearing myself. I'm still recovering from an ear infection. But give us a little bit of information about what's coming out in the upcoming months beyond these releases. What's in store for the future of the brewery?
Well, in terms of the beers themselves, what's coming out next is it's going to be seasonal stuff. So we're constantly looking for new things. We've got a maple farmer from upstate New York. Basically, they maple, right? Make maple syrup, maple this, maple that. You name it, maple, they make it. We're going to make a maple ale with him. So,
I'm there for that.
Maple syrup. I mean, because just one of those things where maple sugar. So that one, I've already, I'm on board with that. That's our next brew. As a matter of fact, in the fermenters right now, I've got the Myrtil, and I'm also going to do another little thing that I've really been interested in. Years ago, McKellar put out these single hop beers, and to me, that was a real eye opener for me, and local farmers. So that's another beer that I've got in the tanks right now is a single hop cascade. We're going to call it our single. We've got our double, we've got our triple, we've got our quad.
Cool.
But we've really never brewed a single before.
Are people going to see that as an IPA, or are they going to see it more as a pale?
I'm going to dedicate that line to a Belgian style pale ale.
Like it.
That,
Yes.
Focuses on a single hop. Right now, so in the fermenters right now, we have our Cascade hops, which are prolific on Long Island. They grow like crazy. So we wanted to showcase very first thing Cascade. It's a very approachable hop that I think people will enjoy. And if that goes well, we want to then start to introduce the other Mount Hood, which aren't quite as well known or quite as
not those sexy hops that you see in those hazy IPAs.
Right.
But I will say this: one of the
He's using all Galaxy hops in that single.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, well, hey, if John Canzella's growing them, I'll be using Galaxy hops. But
he might
he's
find
actually growing CTZ, which is the Columbus Tomahawk Zeus hop.
Yep.
Really nice. Like I'm really excited.
That's gonna be a cool one. I noticed. So when I homebrewed for about a year or two, the ones that I could get were Centennial, Mount Hood, and Cascade. Those were the easy ones to find at the homebrew store. So a big shout out to Kedco in Farmingdale for providing those to the average homebrewer in the early 2000s. But yeah, it was those are like, I mean, you say the noble hops. To me, that was the hierarchy before all these other sexy hops came out that I got very used to, that liked and sought after in my beer. So I'm glad that you're highlighting some of those local ones, because I'm sure it kind of even, like I said, shows the path in which you're going, and not trying to just fall into everyone else's train or caboose or whatever you want to call it at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'll echo your statement to our hop farmers.
Please don't fall in my caboose.
Okay. I can't leave out our Bier de Noël. It's our Christmas beer or our holiday beer. We do it every year. We skipped last year, unfortunately, but we do our Bier de Noël, which is basically our Belgian-style quad.
Oh, yeah.
So I know Steve's had the quad. That's one of my favorite beers as well. We only do it during the holiday season. So those are the two big ones, the single that we've got coming out with the Cascades. We've got the maple beer, which I'm very excited about, and the year. And on tap now, we're getting into fall. We've got our apple ale, which is always important. We talked about that. And we'll always have our double. We'll always have our triple on tap. We'll always have our Rochelle Blanche, our Belgian-style wit beer, the original, on tap.
Talk for another hour about history, because I could do that all night, and I more than likely the audience will like it to a point, but when we start going too deep, some of the non-history buffs will start to fade out. But I really do appreciate you guys coming on. We will continue a conversation about what else we can possibly get into, because there's so much science that you're working with over there, and the knowledge that you have is unbelievable. So thank you very much for imparting that on us.
It's a labor of love, I couldn't sing and I couldn't dance. This is the best I can do.
Well, we've been wanting to have you guys on for quite a while. We've been talking about it, and it just didn't work out, and the time slots, and then finally we're like, we have to do it. We have to have you guys on. You're a local staple. And I was saying earlier to Rachel, we want, this is a hard time right now for all the breweries on Long Island, New York State, and we want the good breweries to stick around. The ones that are not that great, well, sorry, you gave it a good shot, but the ones that are producing a product that, and I said to her earlier also, people don't realize what they have until it's gone, and then when it's gone, they really, really are upset. Well, we don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
We want to have what you're producing around for quite a while, so we could all reap the benefits of the goodness.
Well, Steve, we wouldn't be here if it were not for brewers like you that really kind of showed us the way in our early days. And there were many days that really, in all honesty, that we came to you and said, Steve, what do we do? Or what's you really, you paved the way for a lot of us. And we really are grateful for you and all the excellent beer that you've produced. I was
drinking a salt and fudgery last 2 nights ago,
On the low, I'm a.
Rachel was like, I don't remember what it was, and I think Jamie was too drunk to remember. But
on the low, I am a Barrage super fan.